Hi, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I don't have a presentation, so I'm just going to give some reflections on what we've heard, and I'll be quite brief as well. I appreciate this has been a marathon session. So I suppose my interest in this sustainable businesses, but what I want to talk about is really the role of the economy and wellbeing economy, because that's my interest in my day job. I'm used to talking about the economy and all of the different focus. So I'm going to really think about the role of business and how I believe to deliver a wellbeing economy, we need to bring business with us. We haven't had a lot of business people here, I think, over the last day or two, so maybe we can have a think about that. And I'm going to kind of look backwards and forwards a little bit with that regard. When I was doing the session yesterday, I mentioned Adam Smith, and actually Tim Jackson referred to him. And Adam Smith can be seen as a market-driven, kind of right-of-centre economist, and he can also be viewed on the left. So I've got some selective quotes from Smith that I'm going to use as well in that regard. For those that don't know Adam Smith, he was born about 300 years ago, and his two major publications, Theory of Moral Sentiments and The Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776. And he had a lot to say about, he was viewed as a kind of modern father figure for economics, and he had a lot to say about the principles of how markets work, the importance of specialisation, division of labour, things that we see in businesses today. And he also wrote about tax, regulation, regulatory capture as well. But one of the quotes that I hadn't actually heard until I was at an event last week was, "The business of business is business." And I thought that was quite interesting. And this very much, business is about business, don't disturb business. But Smith also recognised alongside that, which was the point that Tim Jackson was making around this notion of self-interest, the invisible hand of the market. Now, there's a great quote from Smith, which still, I think, translates today, and it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard of their own self-interest. So this idea of the profit motive, what's driving business, was there away from the beginning. But also, Smith also recognised that, and he challenged that notion in his other work, and he also recognised that the role of government, or the performance of government, should be viewed with regard to the extent to which they improve. In his day, he referred to it as the happiness of their citizens, but he was actually talking about their well-being. So the reason Smith is still relevant 300 years on from his birth is that he brought forward a lot of principles, and if you're being selective like me, you can take a quote to suit whatever agenda that you want. So what is the role of business in a well-being economy? I mean, Smith recognised business, the role of business is business, and I was thinking about that. So we need, obviously, for me, the well-being economy, how do we define it? We've heard loads of that. There's something about economic, social and environmental well-being. And in economic well-being, we're talking about sustainable businesses, thriving economies that are providing a positive contribution and not at the expense of higher inequality or nature or the environment. So how do we get the current system into being a positive, enabling contribution to the wellbeing economy, recognising the need to change? Now, our Cabinet Secretary yesterday spoke about the just transition, how you move from industries such as oil and gas into renewables, and how you take those workers with you with that regard. So there's definitely something about change. But so coming from my background in economics, we're if you get the joy of doing economics in first year, they'll teach you the principles of markets, and you do a thing about looking inside the firm, and this notion that firms firms are seeking to optimise profits, this notion that they work out their marginal revenue, marginal cost, and there's a price, and these graphs all cross. In reality, most businesses, particularly smaller firms, are about sustaining or surviving. And if you think about dealing often with a complex and changing regulatory environment, so sometimes when, in my role, when we go out and speak to businesses, we get all of that kind of placed back. And if you think about the current economic conditions, which I suppose we've touched on a little bit, we've got a kind of cost of living crisis, we've got inflation, supply chains changing, we're seeing energy and input costs rising, and all of that is driving change in business models, which we've got to influence in a positive way. So maybe the question is more about how do we support business with both moving to this new or more sustainable model? And I think to think about that, you've got to think about two issues: the short-term pressures and the longer-term goals. Now, the short-term pressures will always be there. So for business at the moment, it's input costs, supply chains, disruption, dealing with new technology, AI, and that constant churn. But there'll always be short-term pressures for business. At this time, maybe more challenging, but other times it will be, there's a boom, we need more resources, we need to do this or that. So there's something about recognising we need to kind of get them to lift their head from the short term and look at the long term. So that support in the short term should be conditional on what we want to achieve going forward. So I've got kind of 3 areas of suggestions to think about. So first, I think it's important to frame the contribution of business in a positive way, because actually we've got many successful businesses that provide good employment, high earnings that are sustainable, and actually their innovation, technological change improves well-being, quality of life in that regard. So there's something about recognising that positive vision, recognising the role that they have in communities and how important they are in terms of our society. So in the wellbeing economy, can we deliver that without the economy part? And thinking about the transition and the need that the requirements to change our economic system, we've spoke about the multiple crises that we're facing between climate, nature, rising inequality. For me, I think we need to change behaviour. And what I mean by behaviour is cultural norms within a lot of the business sectors. And often, if I speak about small firms, construction firms, companies, they compete with other businesses. So there's something about the norms, the business norms, how you change those norms in a positive way, and you drive that. And yesterday we heard about kind of tipping points and systems, and once you get a cumulative mass of people operating or behaving in that way, then that's essentially what happens. We've seen, obviously, loads of people have referred to COVID-19, where we've seen change happening really, really quickly and overnight. So things can happen at scale. The third point is I think we need to mobilise and bring a consensus towards change that recognises both the short and the long term. So how you do that in a positive way, in a positive framing that brings the business community and changes the economy in that regard. So in Scotland, we're coming at this from different perspectives. So we have a policy around fair work, looking at how businesses interact, obviously, with their employees, the extent to which they pay them the real living wage, the extent to which they invest in training of their staff, the extent to which the staff have a voice within the business. And we've seen progress in that. In Scotland, now over 90%, I think it's 91% of people in employment earn the real living wage. So that's positive. That's the highest across the regions and nations of the UK, where the UK average, I think, is 85%. We've driven that through, government has a lot of levers. We spend a lot through procurement. We've driven that through conditionality, a requirement for businesses to pay the real living wage in support of government grants. So there's something about government influencing and supporting the change. The green transition, it's been spoken about quite a bit. Our Cabinet Secretary mentioned it yesterday. So recognising the opportunities are there through this period of change, and actually making sure that the benefits of that change are captured for everyone through communities. In Scotland, we're passing legislation at the moment around community wealth building, which is place-based. It will provide legislative powers for local authorities to essentially determine procurement, investment within their own areas. So again, it's kind of bottom up, and you're recognising that change, and you're recognising that different opportunities exist across different parts of the country. The final couple of things I want to say is we're embarking on what's called a New Deal for business, and as part of that, one of the areas we're discussing with the business community in Scotland is the transition to a wellbeing economy. So we get a lot of, well, what do you mean about wellbeing? I'm too busy, I'm doing sustainability, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But actually, what we're trying to do is co-produce that vision with them so that they're clear how they contribute to that. How does a business contribute to a wellbeing economy? Well, it pays its workers above the real living wage, maybe invests in local supply chains, reduces its carbon footprint, has a net zero plan, is open, non-discriminatory. So you can start thinking about, and most of the businesses that we do and work with obviously operate in that basis. So that was just a very quick run through of some ideas around the kind of business, the wellbeing economy, and that type of lens. So governments in particular have got convening power. We have a lot of influence, and I think it's using that in a positive way. We heard reference yesterday to wellbeing economy governments, and what's interesting within that is we heard about Finland, obviously the economy of wellbeing, very much driven from a health perspective. New Zealand, the cost-benefit analysis of wellbeing driven from their treasury. With Wales, future generations. Obviously Iceland, a major leader in gender and sustainability. And then in Scotland, it kind of comes out of our economic department. So we're doing loads about wellbeing and health and inequality and social, but it's trying to bring that economic lens, and I think that economic lens is really, really important in that regard. So to conclude, the business of business is business, but we need to change that. We need to change that into something, the business of business is wellbeing. And the final thing I would say is we won't deliver a wellbeing economy without the business sector. And actually, we need their acumen, their business innovation, their investment. I had the pleasure yesterday of visiting a geothermal plant just 30 minutes from Reykjavik, which is doing really pioneering work around capturing carbon and putting it back in the ground and coming up with solutions that are both practical and innovative. So thank you very much. I think we're just about back on time, so thank you. Cheers.